in the admin console, your databases are only as good as the servers you choose to run them on. Having fast, reliable operation on your server is essential for the best performance within your database. Some of the most decisions you'll make regarding your server's performance happen well before you ever install FileMaker Server. So we're going to walk through some of those choices with you today so you're prepared to make them as they come up. Before we do that, though, I want to introduce FileMaker Academy a bit. If you can scroll forward for me, Alan, to that FileMaker Academy screen. There we go. Our host here, FileMaker Academy, is a great group. We're proud to be a charter member. And to really explain what it is, it's a consortium of leading FileMaker development companies across the United States. All of these companies you see on the screen in front of you here are Business Alliance members who represent the best of the best within the FileMaker development world. Our purpose in joining forces is to further educate FileMaker users and developers and to encourage best practices and foster further adoption of the software. So we're really excited that you're here today and hoping you're able to take a little piece of that away with you. A little housekeeping before we get started. If you can bump forward a slide, Alan. Please type questions into the GoToMeeting question box as Alan's talking. I'll kind of gather those as we go, and we'll cover them all at the end. If we don't get to your question for some reason today, Alan and I will do our very best to get in touch with you and cover it with you personally over the phone or most likely by email. If for any reason you're having a hard time getting it through, please feel free to send a question to info@skeletonkey.com. Please allow me to introduce today's speaker, Alan Kurtlink. Alan's an information analyst, FileMaker certified developer, and FileMaker authorized trainer here at Skeleton Key. In the 17 or so years he's been working with FileMaker, Alan's run his own business. He's authored some articles for FileMaker Advisor magazine and white papers for FileMaker. I have the joy of interacting with Alan on almost a daily basis, and more importantly get to talk to clients he works with, and clients tell me he's one of the easiest developers in the world to work with. You combine that with his superb technical skills, you've really got a superhero developer, and I'm excited to hear him talk today. I'm sure that he's blushing at this point, but without further ado, I'm going to hand the reins over to Alan Kurtlink and wish him well. Go for it, Alan.
All right, thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to be taking a look at, as I named it, FileMaker Server Beyond the Admin Console. Today, we won't really be talking about the admin console or the FileMaker Server software itself very much, but instead what we want to take a look at is the hardware that you're running your server on. This is something that over the years I've seen kind of shipwreck a lot of solutions. A lot of work goes into the product, but if you don't have a great box to run it on, or even a good box to run it on, the end result can be less than stellar. So what we want to do today is educate you on some of the decisions that you can make to start off well here. Make sure that you spend your money wisely when you're looking at hardware, and make sure that you get the best server you can to really let FileMaker shine and show your solution in the best possible light. So the first thing we want to do is we want to talk briefly about how a database server differs from a file server. We want to look at choosing server hardware. We're going to look at configuring the OS, and then just a little bit about resources where you can learn more. Then at the end, we're going to do a Q&A session. As Jason mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, just type them into your GoToMeeting console there, and Jason will kind of collect those and run them by me at the end. All right, so let's dive in. So FileMaker Server, or a file server versus a database server. What is the difference? It is a subtle difference in some ways, but one thing that we see is that a lot of people that have experience, or their IT department has experience setting up a file server, they'll just, when we tell them we need another machine for a database server, they go, well, I'll just order another file server, and we'll have it just like all of our others. It'll be fine. But there are some differences there that can really stand out. First of all, a file server generally has large capacity drives, and also you tend to, it can be acceptable. I won't say this in all cases, but it can sometimes be acceptable to run other applications on a file server. Whereas with a database server, in contrast with large capacity drives, we don't care about capacity necessarily. A lot of times our databases don't need a large drive, but what they do need is a really fast drive. We want to serve that data up to our users just as fast as we possibly can. We definitely want to avoid running other applications, and we want to make sure that file sharing is disabled. Even if the live database files are excluded, it's generally just a best practice to leave that turned off. So once we start looking at which platform we want to choose for our server, the first question is, do we want to go with a Mac or a PC? In a lot of cases, that's a very easy decision to make because your organization is all Windows or all Mac. And I certainly think that the most important thing here when you're making this decision is that the best platform for your server is the one you know how to use. If you're an all Mac office, and that's what all your IT people are familiar with, don't go out and buy a Windows server necessarily just for your FileMaker server. If you don't know how to administer that box, if you're going to run into headaches there, then sticking with a Mac is the best way to go, and vice versa. If you're an all Windows office, don't feel that you need to go with a Mac to run your server on. We do want to list out just a few kind of pros and cons of the various platforms. Running under the Mac OS, these days Apple no longer offers hardware specifically designed as a server. They do offer the Mac Mini server and the Mac Pro configured as a server, but now that the X servers are out of their product line, there's nothing that's really built from the ground up as a server. Also, and this next one may just be something that I've been running across lately. Java support seems like it can be problematic. Part of that is probably the fact that support is transitioning over from Apple distributing the updates to Oracle, but there seem to be some issues there at the moment. And also, if you do accidentally install a Java update on your Mac OS server, getting that rolled back is really difficult. Unlike on a PC, it's not falling off a log easy on a PC, but at least it's doable. The other thing you may want to consider here is the web server that you're running. On the Mac OS, it's going to be Apache. On a Windows server, it's going to be IIS. With a PC, we've got a wide range of hardware to choose from, and that can be both a good and a bad thing. There's so much out there, sometimes it's a little difficult to pin down exactly what you may need or what may be best for your particular situation. It's also more widely targeted by viruses. I'm certainly not going to say that the Mac isn't targeted or suggest that you not run antivirus. You should certainly run antivirus on both platforms. but you are going to be more likely to get hit if you are running a PC. Then finally there, as we mentioned before, web server-wise, we're running IIS. All right, so let's look at selecting hardware. FileMaker does provide us a minimum and recommended system requirement setup for FileMaker Server and FileMaker Server Advanced. There on the products page, we're going to take a look at today RAM, processor, hard drives, and discuss a little bit about optional components. RAM, while it's certainly important, I wouldn't say that this is something that you want to put the most money into. You certainly want to get at least 8 gigs, but if you've got extra money, this isn't necessary. Putting additional RAM into the machine isn't going to get you a lot of bang for your buck, but certainly don't skimp on this. So 8 gigs is a good rule of thumb there, whether you're running Mac OS or Windows. Processor. You want to get at least a dual core. Actually, these days I think it's probably pretty hard to pick up a server, if it is really a server, and not get at least a dual core. But that is the recommended minimum there. And while this is a very important component, as I said a while ago, most servers are going to already have a more than adequate processor in the base model. So this isn't the first place where I would put additional money. What we do want to look at is the hard drives. This is really the heart and soul of your server here. If you're going to consider this a server, I think you should at least have 2 drives in the machine. You can combine drives in a RAID to improve security and or performance, and we're going to, if you're not familiar with what RAID is, we will be looking at that in just a few moments. As you're considering drives, there are a few essential stats that you want to make sure that you take into consideration. Capacity, certainly one, but I want to say here that more is not necessarily better. As we mentioned earlier, on a database server, you don't necessarily need huge drives. Your database, in most cases, isn't going to, fill up a 1 terabyte drive, and the more space you have, in some ways, that's just more space to get fragmented over. So don't get fooled into thinking that more is better here. You do want to look at the RPMs on the drive. This isn't always an indication of absolute speed, but higher numbers are better here. We want to drive with a healthy amount of cache to store the data. And we want to look at the average seek time, average write time, and average latency as well. And we want to be sure that we're looking at the average times for all of these numbers. We want to make sure that we don't get caught up on the peak numbers here. Peak numbers are, what the drive can do in a split second, but not necessarily maintain. All right, hard drive types. There are 3 main types of drives that you're going to encounter these days: SATA, SAS, and SSD. SATA, or serial ATA, is certainly the most common drive that you'll see out there. These tend to be high capacity. They're relatively inexpensive. Overall, they tend to be slower. And you really see a wide variety of quality in these drives. The machine that you buy at Office Depot or Staples or any machine, its base drive is going to be a SATA drive in most cases. There are certainly higher end SATA drives, but if you do include SATA drives in your server, make sure that they are of a higher quality. Next we have SAS, or serial attached SCSI. These tend to be also high capacity drives, but also in addition they're very high performance most times. It's not unusual to see 10,000 and up to 15,000 RPM drives in these, and if you do need both higher capacity and high performance, this is certainly the way to go. They do also cost a little bit more, but usually if this is going to be a machine that's going to be seeing a lot of use, investing a little extra in SAS drives is well worth it. Finally, we have SSD drives, or solid state. These are completely different from hard drives as we've known them in the past. I think these are becoming common enough that most people are probably familiar with them now, but these have no platters, no motors to spin, so with those, without those moving parts, reliability is theoretically higher with these. They are very fast. Their capacity tends to be lower, and the price per gigabyte is also very high on these. But fortunately for us, as we've said, high capacity is not necessarily the name of the game with a database server, so these work very well in a database server. Once we've got our drives picked out, one thing that we can do to further increase performance is to implement what's called a RAID, or a redundant array of independent disks. This is where we combine two or more drives into a single logical unit. So from the OS's perspective, in most cases, it's going to see this drive, or these multiple drives, as basically one single drive. Data is going to be divided up or replicated among multiple drives, and this is going to allow us to improve performance, resilience, and or reliability, and possibly capacity. Now, RAID is kind of a blanket term, but there are a lot of different ways that this can be implemented. We're going to focus on just a few of these, the ones that are most applicable to a database server. And these are, what we want to talk about mainly today are levels 1 and 10. You do see some use of RAID 5 with database servers. We're not really going to talk about that too much today. In our opinion, generally, if you're going to go with 5, you might as well go on up to a RAID 10, which offers both improved speed and reliability. So we generally don't put out a lot of RAID 5 arrays. Two terms that I want to make sure that you're aware of as we're looking at these are mirroring and striping. Mirroring means that we write the same data to multiple disks to improve reliability, so that data is being mirrored between the two or more drives. With striping, instead of writing necessarily the same data to multiple disks, we're taking a portion of the data and we're dividing that up amongst multiple drives. That allows us to access the data faster, because we can get, let's say, we can get, say, half the data from each drive. So level 1 is mirroring. It requires at least 2 drives, and so we're writing data to both drives at the same time. The data is preserved if either drive fails. So if one of our drives fails, we haven't really lost anything. We can replace that drive in the array and rebuild the RAID, and we're we're fine. There is no performance benefit to this type unless you want to count not being out if one of your drives dies. Next we have RAID 10. Sometimes this is also referred to as RAID 1+0. This is going to have both mirroring and striping. And the reason that we don't just do this all the time is that instead of just 2 drives, this is going to require 4 drives. So we're going to write basically half the data. If we implement it with 4 drives, we would write half the data to 2 of the drives, and then we would mirror those drives onto the other 2 drives. So this one gives us both performance and reliability. In order to set up a RAID, we have to have a controller of some type. And this can be either software or hardware based. In some instances, like if you're running a Mac Mini server, we don't have a card slot to put in a hardware-based RAID controller. So there's really nothing we can do but use a software controller for our RAID. However, when we can, we certainly want to avoid that. Software controllers are going to rely on the computer's CPU to manage this, and they're never going to give you anywhere near the performance that you're going to get out of a hardware controlled RAID array. And that said, even within hardware controlled, we still have a wide range of performance ability. So don't assume that just because you have a RAID card that you're getting the most you can out of your array. We want to certainly be sure to spend adequately here. If you put a lot of money into your drives, you can really shoot yourself in the foot by cheaping out on the controller at the last minute. All right. So let's look at something besides just some PowerPoint slides here. I apologize that this topic does not necessarily lend itself to a whole lot of show and tell, but we'll do as much as we can. Let's take a look at some sample configurations of both Mac and PC servers here. So what I have done is go to the Apple Store, went to Shop Mac here, selected Mac Mini, and then selected the Mac Mini server. So what we get with this is 2 drives automatically. We get 2 hard drives in here with no optical drive, and we also get Mac OS X server installed. The base setup on this is just 4 gigs of memory. Here I would say that $100 is well spent to bump that up to 8 gigs. The other thing you can do if you want to save a little money there are some great third-party companies out there that can sell you a RAM upgrade for less than $100 to get you on up to 8 gigs. Hard drive. On our acceptable level, I'd say we can stick with 2 1-terabyte drives. I'm not crazy about that, but it does get you by. You'll notice here that this is only a 5400 RPM drive, so this is this is not going to be a very high performance machine. That said, if you've got a small work group, the fact that you can actually get a machine with 2 drives in it for around $1,000 is not too bad. Otherwise, we're really going to leave this as is. So that's you notice I didn't label this good in my slide, but I would call this acceptable. The next level on this, I would say, would be to go up to solid-state drives. You're going to see a pretty dramatic improvement in performance here. It does cost you an extra $600, but the 2 solid-state drives will really improve your performance with this. On this, we would be running it in a RAID 1 configuration. In some ways that's not ideal. We're not, so we are still basically just using one large disk. When we do our backups, we're writing to the same drive that we are reading from. As I said, not ideal, but the fact that these are solid-state drives will make up for a lot of that, and the redundancy that we get there in running a RAID 1 setup. If one of these drives fails, we're still good to go. To get beyond this, I think on a Mac server we've got to get away from the Mac Mini. So the next level I would be looking at would be jumping back here from the Mini over to a Mac Pro. And here we have a couple of options. The difference between a quad-core Pro machine and what is labeled on the Apple Store as a server is $500. Through the App Store now, you can upgrade from a standard Mac OS X to Mac OS X server for, I believe that's just $50 now. So a lot less than $500. You may be well served here to go with a standard Mac Pro and then just upgrade to OS X server as opposed to necessarily making the jump to what's labeled on the website as a server. As we look at configuring this, we would certainly want to jump our memory up from 6 gigs up to 8 gigs. Hard drive bay 1, 1 terabyte drive is probably acceptable. We could, keep this as a run our OS off of this. Ideally, I would put another SATA drive in there for the OS. We could run a RAID 1 between those first two so that we've got redundancy on our OS. And then additionally, to give our database performance a shot in the arm, I'd go with solid-state drives in bay 3 and 4. Now, here again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting these from Apple. That's quite a price difference. $1,000 for a 512 gig solid-state drive is certainly paying a premium. There are some other excellent options out there, and while we don't necessarily want to put forward any specific retailer, I would certainly say that Otherworld Computing is one that is worth a look. They've got some excellent solid-state drives. Their Mercury 6G SSDs here. Let's see. The Enterprise drives. Let's take a look. We can get some of these offer up to 6 gig per second, which is just phenomenal performance. And we can get that for a lot less than $1,000 a drive. In a lot of cases, 50 gig drive is going to be plenty for our needs, so $400 a drive is not too bad. And that's for the 6G here. We can certainly pull that back to Even their 3 gigabyte a second drive is a very nice drive, and a lot cheaper than what we'd be able to get through the Apple Store. All right, so that's a couple of options for Mac servers. As I said before, it's really kind of a shame in some ways that Apple doesn't offer hardware that's really, designed to be a server from the ground up. We're certainly paying a premium for a graphics card here. We don't need a 1 gig graphics card in this, but there's nothing that we can do to scale that back. So in some ways, some resources are being wasted here. Let's take a look at some other options on the Windows side. I'm going to walk us through these on Dell's site. Here again, I'm not trying to promote Dell as a product. They do make some decent servers. We probably end up using quite a few of these, but I feel about Dell in some ways like I feel about democracy. It is the worst company out there for PCs except for all the others. So I'm not necessarily in love with Dell. They do probably, for a demo like this, have one of the better configurators online to walk you through. Let me say there that when you first come to Dell's site, make sure, if you want to see all these options, that you select the for large enterprise store here. For whatever reason, they've segmented up their online store so that if you choose small to medium-sized business, even if you choose the same server in some instances, you won't necessarily see all of the same options that you can get if you go to the large enterprise store. So I'm going to go with a little older server here, not one of the most recent ones. I've used a few of these in the past and had very good luck with them. The T310 tower server, that's part of the Generation 11 servers. They've recently released what they call Generation 12. So this isn't cutting edge, but it's a solid box if you're looking for an entry-level server. So let's take a look at the base model here. One thing that we do want to make sure that we change right off the bat is go with hot plug hard drives rather than cabled hard drives. That's going to change some of the options that we see down below. So we want to be sure that we select that. We certainly don't want to go with the Intel Celeron here. We're going to go with, let's go with the 3430 2.4 gigahertz. We're going to jump that up to 8 gigs of RAM. I'm going to leave the OS off of this. Depending on your needs, you may need to pick, enterprise level or standard edition server. Either of those is certainly acceptable for FileMaker Server. I don't even know if this is an option here. If you do come across a box where, say, a Foundation server is an option, I would recommend staying away from that. Also, be aware that Windows Server 2012 is not listed on FileMaker's site as a, I don't believe they've listed that as a tested OS yet, so I would recommend that you stick with Server 2008 standard or better for the moment. So let's select a RAID type here. We're going to go with, in a base model, let's just say RAID 1. And I'm going to go with the let's see, let's go with the PERC S300. Let's see, I don't have a, or excuse me, the PERC 6CI here. In a base setup, you could go as low as 2 500 gigs. And we can see that for a this isn't an incredibly fast server, but for $1,500 less the cost of an OS, this would certainly be an acceptable box. If we wanted to go, if we wanted to go up a level here, we could go with a RAID 10 and go with 4 drives, which still keeps our price pretty reasonable. Although I'd probably, you'd see a lot of performance improvement going up to a little faster drive here. If we go up to, say, a 15K drive, a SAS drive as opposed to a SATA, and put 4 of those in there, take off our 500 gig, that's going to be a significant performance there. But also that certainly kicked our cost up here. We've got, we are up to almost $3,500 here, but for a server, this thing's going to be running your entire business. That's certainly not out of the ballpark, I wouldn't say. The other nice thing about a PC server here is we do have some additional options. The DRAC Enterprise for management is certainly a nice option that you can add on for $350. That's going to let you reboot the server even if your machine totally crashes. This gives you some embedded management to the device. That's an option that, at least as far as I'm aware, there's no way to get really with a Mac server. All right, so we've looked at a couple of hardware options there, kind of a good, better, and better yet option for both Mac and Windows. Before we move on, let's talk just briefly about what you can do if you already have an existing server that you're wanting to, get a few more years out of. See if you can add some life to it. If you weren't necessarily, the better server you buy to start with, the longer you're going to be able to extend its life. That's certainly a problem if you are considering a Mac Mini server. Upgradability is very limited, but if you've got a server that you're wanting to get a little more life out of, certainly adding some RAM, get it up to at least that minimum of 8 gig can be a huge help. Also, if we can upgrade the drives, put something faster in there, replace some SATA drives with SAS drives, or even just upgrade our SATA drives to a faster drive. As I said earlier, there's a wide range of performance within SATA drives, so you may want to crack open your server, take a look at what drives it came with. You may have a lot of room for improvement even within just SATA drives there. All right, so let's move away from hardware now and talk about what we can do to configure the OS. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about from here on out, we're going to be discussing it here, but there's a really excellent publication out there on FileMaker's website, the FileMaker Server 12 configuration guide. A lot of this info is in there. So I would certainly recommend that you you look up that publication. It's not the easiest guide to find on the website, I will say. So I really wish it was available to just everyone, but I do believe you have to be a TechNet member to find that. Signing up for TechNet is free though, so sign up for a membership and you'll be able to dig through there and find that in some of the docs. They have some excellent recommendations on both the Mac OS and on Windows here, and we're gonna take a look at a few of these. First of all, let's say that on the Mac, while there's not a huge difference between OS 10 and OS 10 Server, it does make something of a difference. So we certainly prefer that you go with OS 10 Server. The differences there aren't night and day, but even if you're not using the other, using it as say Open Directory server and using FTP server and mail server, all of that, you don't have to enable all of that. You can still leave that turned off and still get benefits from having it from running OS 10 Server underneath. One thing we certainly want to do is disable file sharing on this machine, and this is Windows or Mac here. One of the first questions we always get when we recommend this is how am I going to get my files up and down? If you need to access and transfer files to the machine, remote desktop is a great help there. Also with FileMaker 12 server, keep in mind that you can upload files just like you've always been able to, but now you also have the ability to download files back to your machine through the admin console. If you're not already using that functionality, you really should. I do occasionally run into somebody who's all old school and moves the files up there themselves, but you should really be doing that through the admin console. In addition to disabling file sharing, we want to disable Spotlight. And let's take a look at how we would do that. This is the same, and really a lot of the things we're going to be looking at here are things that you can do whether you're running OS 10 Server or just regular OS 10. Spotlight indexing improves searches that you do on the drive, but it's a process that kicks in automatically and is going to be forcing your drive's index to update. We really don't want anything accessing our drive besides FileMaker Server if we can. We want to give it, for as much as we can, we want to give it exclusive access to our drive. So disabling Spotlight is a good way to do that. There's not just a turn off option in here. What you have to do instead is go to the privacy section and just exclude your drives from Spotlight indexing. So you put those in there, and that's, as I said, it's not just a switch to turn it off, but by adding your drives to privacy there, you are effectively turning off Spotlight on your whole machine. So in addition to that, we also want to talk about I'm going to go off order here. While we're in system preferences, let's take a look at system updates as well. By the way, you'll notice that I'm not running a 10.7 or 10.8, but all the stuff that I'm showing you will be the same, really in there. The software update option here, we want to certainly turn off download updates automatically. If that's on, you're using up bandwidth that your users may be needing to access the database. Some of those updates can be pretty big. I even recommend that you just go ahead and turn off checking for updates. You certainly want to do it yourself manually on a regular basis, but there's really no reason on a server to be automatically having it do this. It's best to do that manually and do it at a time that you know that your users really aren't using the server. Configuring antivirus. I would have to say that this is the #1 thing that we see mess up servers. People install antivirus on here, which you definitely need to. You definitely need to have antivirus protection running, and that's whether you're on a Mac or on Windows. But most antivirus programs will have something called real-time file system protection. Some of them have different names for this, but what it boils down to in the end is that it's constantly scanning. Every time you access a file, it's checking to make sure that you didn't just write a virus to it. And we want to make sure that it is not scanning our live databases. As we said a while ago, the only thing that should touch those files is FileMaker. So we can go in here to real-time protection, and in our case, you'll notice that we're using ESET-NOD. As I said, just about, as far as I'm aware, every antivirus program I've ever run across has some kind of option for disabling real-time protection. You may have to disable it across the board, but most good programs allow you to configure an option that excludes certain areas from it. All right, here we go. Under exclusions, we can go in here and add FileMaker Server, data, and databases. Now what we want to make sure that we don't exclude is our backups directory. We still definitely want this to scan our backups because that's going to, if our files do get infected, scanning our backups is going to let us know. But what we do want to exclude is our live database folder. Now I'm going with the default here. Keep in mind that if you have additional live database locations, or you've got your live databases in a different location, you'll need to exclude that area as well. Backups, same way, we want to exclude live files. And system updates, we've already talked about that. So let's move on here to Windows. A lot of the things are very similar. We want to disable file sharing, configure antivirus. You do that in very much the same way. We want to exclude live files. We want to set our system updates to not include automatic downloads and certainly not automatic installs. But in addition to that, on Windows we do have a couple of other options that we want to look at. We want to look at disabling disk indexing. This is very similar to Spotlight on the Mac. And how we do this is select our disks. We right-click to open up a menu and go to Properties. And Allowed Indexing is an option right here on the General tab. We'll turn that off. We don't care about fast searching on this. The only thing that we want to search this drive is FileMaker. All right, I'm going to cancel that just so we don't have to sit here and watch it. But in addition to that, we also want to set our shadow copies off. Shadow copies allow you to view the contents of shared folders as they existed in a previous point in time. This is kind of like almost like and this is a huge leap in an analogy here, but similar to a time machine backup. We want to make sure that that is disabled on our drive. Here again, that's going to be increasing disk traffic, and we want to keep that to a minimum if at all possible. Finally, on Windows, we want to set a fixed swap file size. This is our virtual memory. Windows allows the swap file or the virtual memory to expand and shrink dynamically, but here again, that's something that's going to be using up disk cycles that we would really like to avoid, so we can turn that off by selecting our system, going to Properties there, going to Advanced, Performance, Advanced. You know, it's nice that it's right out here in the open where it's easy to get to, but it does take a little bit of digging, but you'll eventually drill down to it here. Setting a swap file size, or setting this to a custom size as opposed to a system managed size, just cuts down on some of the disk writes and frees up more of that for your FileMaker server. All right, and as I said, that was kind of a whirlwind tour, especially on some of those OS options. I cannot stress enough how much you should pick up a copy of the FileMaker 12 Server Configuration Guide. If you have not found that, it is an excellent, excellent read. I certainly appreciate all the work that goes into that. That is not included in the main documentation that comes with FileMaker Server, so you do have to download that separately. Other resources for this topic, check back here to FileMaker Academy. We may be doing additional series along these lines. The FileMaker Training Series, excellent resource, as well as the developer community. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jason.
Hey, Alan, great presentation. We've got a lot of questions coming in. So, folks, as you have your questions, please type them into the question box. I have a feeling in the next 6 minutes we won't cover them all, but we'll try to cover them all offline with you. First question, Alan, which version of Windows Server is the best fit for FileMaker Server?
It's hard to say whether there's a best. That's going to depend on your organization as a whole, but as I mentioned earlier, I would certainly go with standard or above. There are some, specifically, you certainly want to avoid Foundation Server. It's going to be missing some features that you're probably going to be wanting in your FileMaker Server.
Okay.
I know that's kind of a vague answer to say some features. I would recommend, if you want to get more details on that, Wikipedia's got a pretty good rundown of the what's in the various versions of Windows Server.
Have you heard anything from our friends at FileMaker Incorporated about shipping a server version that'll run on Linux? I've actually had that conversation with the system engineers there. Don't expect it to happen anytime soon.
I haven't heard anything about that. It would certainly be nice. We used to have a Linux version, I think back in FileMaker 6, but for whatever reason they have gotten away from that. We can hope that we get one again one day.
Since FileMaker's changed the way its container fields work, are you finding that larger capacity hard disks are more important now than they were in the past?
Yeah, and certainly more people are going to be taking advantage of external storage for their container data, which it's an awesome new feature in 12. Capacity is certainly, we may be seeing a lot more needs for storage there. Although, keep in mind you have control over where those containers, that container data is stored, and one thing that you may want to look at is storing it separate from your other databases. So you could have that container data on another drive to further improve your performance.
A question about operating systems, specifically OS 10 and OS 10 Server. Looks like so I'll just read it so I make sure I don't miss any of the details. We're using iMac as a server with regular OS 10, not OS 10 Server. Not having any issues right now. They're wondering what's the difference between the two operating systems, OS 10 Server and OS 10. They have 4 clients attached to the server that are also on iMacs and are using FileMaker 11 at the moment and planning to convert to 12 soon.
I have to admit, I myself am somewhat foggy on the exact details where OS 10 Server makes improvements over regular OS 10. FileMaker Server certainly is approved to run on both. The FileMaker Server 12 configuration guide does recommend OS 10 Server over regular OS. And I will say at Skeleton Key we have both an IT and a database development side of the business. I am on the database development side, and while I do try and keep a foot over on the IT side, there are other guys there that know more, and I would be happy to see if we can get some more detailed information about that for you.
One of the keys there is you're running FileMaker Server and not relying on a peer-to-peer connection with FileMaker Pro to FileMaker Pro, so that's an important step. Alan, we've got a question about Citrix presentation method. I don't want to pull us too far off of the rails here, but I think it's an interesting question, so I'm going to ask it anyway. If you want to push that off and connect with this person later, let me know. Can you talk a little bit about that option, the Citrix presentation method, for delivering FileMaker remotely rather than the kind of our standard client-server model?
I can talk about it to an extent. I have not used Citrix as much as I've, say, used Windows Terminal Server. We do have a couple of clients that are using that. I am not I'm not the primary developer on either of those projects. It is certainly an excellent way to improve performance if you're having people connect over a wide area network. the I guess is the question: are they looking for, benefits of it over Windows terminal services? This might be a good one to follow up with later.
Sounds like it to me, and we're running up on our time here, folks. I'm sure that you guys all have busy schedules. So we've got quite a few questions that we didn't get to. We really appreciate you asking, and we will connect with you afterwards and make sure that we get your questions answered. Do want to make sure that you know we've got another event December 13th. A good friend of mine, John Mathewson from Keologic, is going to be talking about building a powerful business solution on a budget. John's a great speaker. This is a great topic. Hope to see you all there. And until then, happy times with FileMaker.
Thanks, guys.